Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the blueandgold.com Notre Dame football show. I am Ashton Pollard, your host, and I'm here as always with Mike Singer and Tim Hyde. How are we doing, everyone?
Good evening.
Hey,
Doing
doing
good.
good. Yep.
Good. Perfect. Before we start, again, obviously, thanks for joining us. I want to go ahead and plug our $1 deal that we still have going on. It's our site move deal, but we're still doing it several months into this. So you want to get it now because it will not be around forever. And you're definitely going to regret this fall when actually, I don't know how long it's going, but you're going to regret it whenever it goes away. I know that for sure. So $1, you get all of our sports coverage, all of our recruiting updates, access to our message boards where we put a lot of the scoop that we get before we release it out to the public. So definitely one of the best deals ever. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. Leave us a comment if you're listening back via podcast. Leave us a review. And yeah, thanks for joining us. Before we start, we have a really recruiting heavy episode today, but want to start with our two typical segments. So Tim, what are you drinking?
Always a beer when talking Notre Dame football. So cheers to everyone out there.
There you go. Mike?
I had too many beers over the weekend and two Tigers. I opened up the single malt. That got me right. So we're taking it easy with the Sprite. So I think this is like 6 weeks in a row. I wonder if there's like anyone gambling out there. Like, we're a bunch of degenerates. Like, gambling. Is Mike Singer going to have alcohol on the show tonight?
I hope that people have other hobbies than gambling on whether or not you're going to drink on this show.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
That's fair. I'm actually drinking this time, which is different from the last couple times. I'm drinking rosé because it's 65 degrees, and anytime it's over 60 degrees, that's federally required on my part. So, anyways, yeah, so like I said, we have a really recruiting heavy episode because it is June and that's kind of the big thing going on, but we'll start with our best thing that we saw this week. We're doing this segment every week, and it's something related to Notre Dame athletics. It can be strictly related to football, it can be tangentially related to football, or kind of anything else, I guess. It's very open-ended, but Tim, we'll start with you. What was the best thing you saw this week related to Notre Dame?
Well, I mean, great news. Just a few hours ago, Stephon Tuitt. I know he's retiring and he's not going to be able to play anymore, but I look at that as a heck of a career. The guy played 3 outstanding football seasons for Notre Dame, second-round draft choice, and obviously had a stellar career with the Steelers. Just got his degree recently as well, and cheers to Stephon for hanging it up. He's going to go spend time with the family, raise the kids, and enjoy the rest of his life because he earned it. He had a heck of a career with Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I was writing our kind of breaking news article on that today, and I forgot just how influential he's been in the NFL year after year after year. I know last year he didn't play because of his brother passing and he had an injury. But before that, I mean, he was a mainstay on that Steelers defensive line and arguably one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL. So I'll go next. Mike, if you want to go ahead and pull up the video. So I went with, if any of you are on Twitter and saw this last night, Al Washington, the Notre Dame defensive line coach, posted a video of him playing with his son. His name is Michael. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he looks about, 5, 6-ish. So it says, young Mike asked for a quick session before Pete the Cat and bedtime. He said it's time to craft. We always make that time. So Pete the Cat, I had to look this up, is a children's book series. I sent a text to my mom and she was like, how do you not know what Pete the Cat is? And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, what do you think I'm doing with my time? But hung out on that website for a while. And Mike, I don't know if you want to go ahead and play it. Basically, it's just him kind of hanging out with his son, doing some of the quote drills, I guess, that defensive linemen do, that strip drill, if it'll play. Mike, there we go.
Oh, get out! Bro, that's it, best one. This time I want you to hit as hard as you can, quick. Hit quick! Nice, quicker. It's pretty good hips.
So there you go. Yeah, short, sweet. Looking forward to this kid playing Notre Dame football in 12-ish years again. I don't know exactly how old he is.
Definitely sweet. It was definitely sweet.
Yeah, it was adorable. So, Mike, last but not least, what do you got?
I think mine will. You guys know me. I don't really prepare, for what
we do know that. Yes.
Yeah. just Memorial Day. It was just a fantastic weekend. Thinking of those in my own family who passed in the service, and it was just a good weekend remembering those folks, and paying tribute to our fallen figures in our country who lost their lives in battle.
Yes, no, absolutely. And we obviously hope everyone else had, I'm hesitant to say a happy Memorial Day weekend because it's not really a happy occasion, but a nice one that you were able to spend with your family or doing something that you enjoy because of people that fight on our behalf. So, on that note, we will move into the recruiting stuff for this week. So we thought that because it's June and it's official visit season, and I guess unofficial visit season too, but we thought that we would go kind of position by position in the 2023 class, do exclusively recruiting, talk about who's committed in each position group, who's still on the board, who's a priority, etc. Just a little brief primer, I guess, if you're new to Notre Dame football recruiting. They currently have the #1 class in the country per the On3 consensus football team recruiting rankings. That top 5 is rounded out by USC at 2, Alabama at 3, Georgia at 4, and Tennessee at 5. Obviously, it's still early, so expect that to change, but that's kind of the current landscape. And then of those top 5, at least, Notre Dame has the most commits. They have 13, so they have a 5-star in Keelan Keeley, who we'll get to in a second, 11 4-stars, and then a 3-star. So we're going to start on the defensive side of the ball, and we've combined some of the position groups here for the sake of time since we don't want to be on air for 7 hours going through every single one. So we combine kind of the defensive line in edge. So On3 basically, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but On3 defensive line is interior defensive line, and then edge is kind of your defensive end type of pass rusher, I guess. So this, I think, is the group that we're most sure about right now. There are 4 commits in it. There's Keelan Keeley, like I mentioned, the 5-star, and then Devin Houston, Bubba Cartriori, and Brennan Vernon are the other 3. Those 3 are 4-star recruits. All 3 are in the top 300. And there's still kind of one more on the board that I know we'll get to. So Jason Moore is the number 39 player nationally in the class, and then the number 5 defensive lineman. So Mike, I'll kind of let you start wherever you want, either with those 4 commits or with Jason Moore or anybody else that is on your mind on this within this position group.
Yeah, my fan of my computer is like just going so loud right now because I have about 60 tabs open up on my second monitor with all of the different On3 profiles for all of these recruits. So definitely a lot of guys to talk about. So I kind of wanted to just give like my job title. I don't know who came up with Recruiting Insider. I mean, it makes me feel like I'm a little Adam Schefter, but makes me feel cool. But I will kind of dish on the insider type of things. And then we got Coach Tim Hyde to kind of give his thoughts, his analysis. That's why he gets paid the big bucks. So this one's pretty easy, guys. You got Keelan Keeley. He's a 5-star. He's big time. Brennan Vernon, after he camped at Notre Dame, he did the Irish Invasion last year. Notre Dame sources said, yeah, this guy's a first-round pick. That sounds pretty good. You got Devin Houston, number 214 player in the country, number 28 defensive lineman. Picked the Irish over Michigan, Penn State, and others. Pretty good players. Brothers on the basketball team in Michigan. Kid's athletic. He's big. He can play. You got Bubba Cartriori committed. I mean, they just hit all of their top guys here on the deep. I shouldn't say all, most. I'm sure there's somebody out there that they would have really liked to have in this class as well. But, I mean, Houston, Traore, Vernon, Keeley, these were key targets for the staff. And Jason Moore, who I know Tim Hyde likes a little bit. Tim, I think you do. The number 30. Yeah. Yes. As Ashton mentioned, top 40 player nationally, number 5 defensive lineman. So Notre Dame's got those 4 committed, and it really just does seem like it's more or bust for the 5th spot. I think in an ideal world they would, 4 was the number, but you can't turn down one of these guys that they have on the board. You're taking all 5 of them if you can get all 5. And you see the recruiting prediction machine for our YouTube audience. I mean, it's got Notre Dame at 91.5%, which is rather bold, but hey, you have to like where Notre Dame's at, and I certainly do. I've had a prediction in for the Irish to land him for about 6 months, 5 months actually. So, yeah, Tim. I mean, we've talked about the defensive line at length. Could be one of the best Irish defensive line groups in quite some time.
Oh yes, I mean without a doubt. That's the key is finalizing this one with more, and this is going to be a biggie, Obviously with Keeley, you start looking at 23, 24. You start looking at the depth, and where are these guys going to fit in? Who are they replacing? Obviously, Notre Dame's going to lose 3 instant, really good football players off of this year's team with the Adamiola brothers and Foskey gone. And then there may be another 1 or 2, who knows, especially interior with Cross and Lacey, because they still have eligibility to burn down the road for Notre Dame. So getting that 5th guy, I know it's been talked about a whole bunch, do they take a 5th? But I was actually looking at the numbers earlier for the entire, football team. They start with 85, and I know you've looked at this as well, Mike. They could easily sign 25. 25 is, I think, is extremely doable because they have a lot of guys in that 5th year senior that they could play with down the road if things don't pan out. So getting a guy like Moore to finalize it, you got some edge guys. We've talked a lot about where they fit in, the type of front they may do. The key with all these guys is versatility. A lot of length and a lot of dudes that could play multiple positions once they figure out where they're best at.
Hey, Tim, there's a comment. K-Max says, why does Jason Moore only have 20 offers? I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't really care if Bowling Green and Toledo didn't offer him. I mean, he's got Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Bama, A&M, LSU, Oklahoma, Miami, Washington. I mean, this looks like more than 20 to me. I haven't counted them up. But, yeah, if he doesn't have 20, I'm not too concerned about it.
Yeah, and sometimes those are a little, who cares? Just like you said. I mean, there's some schools that Mississippi State knows we probably have no shot. Can he play at Mississippi State? Yeah. So, but they're not going to recruit him because they're not going to get him. So that happens a heck of a lot in recruiting.
Well, the better example for this is Bubba Cartriori. Let's look at his offer list. He's got 5 offers. That's it. And, you look at his industry comparison page, consensus across the board, he was a top 225 player nationally. 2 of the sites on 3 and 24/7 have his top 100 players. So, yeah, I mean,
no, exactly. He's always been the interesting one, but people forget. I mean, he was committed to BC for like 18 months. He's from Boston, so maybe some schools schools do call people. I've had kids that have signed D1 and just don't even take calls anymore. And sometimes that happens. That does happen a lot. And it's probably after a while, he's like, yeah, I'll take a few more calls, especially with Elston going to Michigan. And then, Notre Dame was always on him. But yeah, it's probably just a lot of schools down south just didn't waste their time with him. That happens a lot in recruiting. So sometimes with these numbers, like, I was 75 offers for Keeley. There's just some guys like they say Utah. He could play at Utah State, but they're just not going to offer him. Okay, so just don't worry about that too much.
I've seen tons of 3 stars with 50 offers, and then you got 5 stars with 10. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, kind of looking at that Jason Moore offer list, I'm curious, like, who else do you want on that list? Kind of everyone. Like, I didn't realize anybody missing, but anyways, all right, we'll move back into the linebacker position, still focused on the defense. So Notre Dame has 2 commits, one of whom is Drake Bowen. He's kind of the face of this, at least this defensive class, if not the entire class. If you're on Twitter, he's very active on Twitter, very active in recruiting the rest of his class. So he's kind of one of the most recognizable faces. And then Preston Zinter is the other one out of the Boston area. And he, I believe, Mike, if I'm not mistaken, was originally listed as an athlete and then was moved, or not moved, but I guess they changed tagged to a linebacker. So speaking of versatility, he has it. So yeah, and then kind of there are a few more on the board. Mike, I don't know if you want to address anyone specifically, but I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, covering this in Lucky Charms tonight as well at blueandgold.com. So you'll have to check that out. But kind of the short of it is Notre Dame's got the 2 commitments. Zinter, who had some looks at tight end. He looks really good on film, catching the passes. H-back tight end split out. But Notre Dame taking him as a linebacker. Drake Bowen. I know everyone loves the NIL thing. I mean, check that valuation out, $156K on 3 valuation. Pretty cool. But yeah, you got 2 darn good backers. I'll let Tim touch on where he feels those guys might play between Rover, Mike, and Will. But it seems like there is 1 to technically or not technically 2 spots left. Got Samuel Mpemba, who has been in the news. I had an article on him at blueandgold.com earlier today, so make sure you check that out. He is listed as an athlete, and Notre Dame's kind of just recruiting him as an athlete. So essentially, my understanding is if Mpemba commits to Notre Dame, he wouldn't necessarily count towards the linebacker class. So let's say Notre Dame gets a commitment for Jaden Osbury, for example, 4-star linebacker from Brian Kelly's new backyard, and then Mpemba commits. Mpemba would not count towards the linebacker numbers. Mpemba would count towards the athlete numbers. So you got those 2 guys. We were going to talk about Mpemba, but we weren't going to dedicate an athlete section to 2 players. So Mpemba would likely come in as a rover, even though he's 6'3", 245 going into senior year. Notre Dame looking at him to play that spot. And then last but certainly not least, here at linebacker, Jordan Hall, a teammate of Mpemba down at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. Mpemba from St. Louis, Hall from Virginia. And Hall will be officially visiting Notre Dame in the middle of June. So where Hall kind of fits into the board, again, we'll have more on that at blueandgold.com, so make sure you check that out. But again, it does seem like Notre Dame will land. My guess right now is of Mpemba, Hall, and Osbury. I think they get Osbury. That would be my guess right now, Tim.
I would love that. Because that would be a perfect 3 linebackers to fill some holes that might leave after this year. Once again, start looking at this class and look where they go next year. You got, with Zinter and obviously with Bowen, those guys are instant Mike and Will. That's the way I look at those guys. Mike and Will, 2 really good football players. Bowen's an outstanding Will. I think Zinter, who is a damn good athlete. I mean, he could play 4 or 5 spots as well. He is very athletic, but I really would love to see him fill out and be a Mike backer down the road. And then Osbury, he's one of the early guys I saw months and months and months ago. He's small. He looks small on film, but I mean, his striking ability is elite. I mean, elite. He will knock the living heck out of you. He is outstanding. And then the IMG guy, I've actually watched his film recently.
Which one?
He's more of a Hall. Mpemba can play anywhere he wants. Flip a coin, you pick your spot.
He's too good. You don't pigeonhole him to one thing because someone's commenting that they think he's 100% a Viper. Yeah, sure, but if I'm Notre Dame, I'm saying, hey, Mpemba, do you want to play quarterback? We'll tell you, whatever the hell you want to do, you can come do it.
Tight end. The guy could catch. Some of his film playing wide receiver is outstanding as an offensive football player. So, and then with Hall, good-looking, physical-looking football player. He's a Mike Will guy. So that'd be interesting to see how he fits in because they're recruiting some outstanding inside backers in the 24 class that I watched some of their film. So Osbury, I think if they had him and you're fine with those 3, I think that'd be outstanding because there's, you're going to lose Bauer. Does Leofau come back for a 5th year? If he starts, has a bona fide heck of a season, does he go pro? Do they invite Bertrand back? Now you start getting into these numbers for the 23 football season and whatnot. So take 3. If they get 3, I think they'd be solid.
Yeah, I think no matter how this 2023 linebacker class ends up, it's going to be really good. I'm not really concerned at all. They're going to get one of those 3, in my opinion. Just look at the 2022 linebacker class. That was so good that I'm not really worried about it all. And then you get Bowen and Zinter. So, linebacker, not a spot you worry about with Marcus Freeman as your head coach. I want to add, we're doing this full-time recruiting show here not only because it's the dog days of the off season for football, but we're very much into the key stage of recruiting. Having official visits, or excuse me, at least one, Elijah Page. This weekend, you got Irish Invasion camp, there's a quarterback camp, a lineman camp. It's just a very busy and important time for Notre Dame recruiting. So if you're someone who maybe doesn't follow recruiting that closely, this is definitely a good show for you to get caught up on some items.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we have a couple of Richard Young questions on the side. We're going to get there, so stick around. And if you just joined us, make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're listening back via podcast. Obviously, give us a rating. But yeah, we'll keep moving through. We, again, to my previous point about combining position groups, we combined corner and safety into just defensive backs. So Notre Dame has 2 defensive backs committed in the 2023 class right now, both of whom happen to be safeties, but Peyton Bowen and then Adon Schuler, with 4 more on the board. Christian Gray is the one that I feel like we've talked about the most, and I believe the highest rated corner, at least still on the board amongst the defensive backs. And then Josiah Wagoner and Micah Bell, who Mike, if I'm not mistaken, was offered after Justin Rhett decommitted. So he's a relatively newer face to this group. And then the safety, only other like top priority, I guess, safety on the board is Caleb Downs, who's the number 1 safety in the country out of Georgia. His brother is Josh Downs at UNC, which if you've watched Notre Dame play USC recently, he absolutely tears up their secondary. So clearly a good athlete, comes from a very athletic family, but we'll start, I guess. Do we want to start with the 2 commits, Bowen and Schuler? Mike, any updates on them, or you want to move to the people still on the board?
Yeah. I mean, Peyton Bowen's picked up some offers since he committed to the Fighting Irish, so you want to, keep him locked in. He visited Oklahoma and Ole Miss unofficially. I think he also went to Texas A&M this spring. So there's always a little bit of concern when you have a commit taking unofficial visits. Now, if he takes an official visit, and I'm not talking about someone who's saying, oh, he might take an official. I'm done with that. Like, is there a date locked in? Do we have plane tickets? Is there a Snapchat? Is there an Instagram post of him on this campus? Because until that point, with someone like Peyton Bowen, I ain't buying it.
Yeah, well, also on the topic, he did a Twitter space with the Irish Players Club a few weeks ago and was asked about this, and he basically said, I don't have anything, and if I do, I'll make sure that it's worked out properly, but I'm all Notre Dame right now. So I know that, you can take that back, technically speaking, but he's been very open, I guess, about kind of what his plans are, at least from what I've seen. So
look, if I was a 17-year-old recruit and I had, an Oklahoma reporter, like, I'm not an idiot. I know who Oklahoma reporters are. I can very much see it on their Twitter, a Michigan reporter or Notre Dame. It would be kind of hard not to like talk that school up because that's just kind of human nature. So who is like, and if that's the case in this recruitment with Bowen, like, who's going to kind of get left at the altar here? I think it'll be the schools not named Notre Dame. I think he's fine with Notre Dame. He's the one official that we know he's taking is that June 10th weekend, which is massive. So Peyton Bowen, a hugely important safety. Number 53 player per the On3 consensus, number 6 safety, just a big-time prospect. And then Notre Dame also has Adon Schuler committed. He's only picked up offers from Alabama, Georgia, and Texas A&M since he committed to the Irish. So whatever it is about Alabama, they just been going after Notre Dame guys a good bit lately. So you got those 2 safeties committed. Notre Dame did have Justin Rhett, a 4-star cornerback from Las Vegas, Bishop Gorman, committed for a while. He decommits. You see Notre Dame extend. Okay, quick side note. In years past, there were so many players that were, even this past cycles, like, is Jaden Bellamy a corner or a safety? Notre Dame was literally recruiting from both. Is Ben Morrison a safety or a corner? Literally for Brophy Prep last year in Phoenix, he played both. Like, once one of his games, he played both positions. So I just decided, let's just combine corner and safety. For this class, though, it's pretty well defined who's a corner and who's a safety. Like, Notre Dame offered Micah Bell. He's a corner. I think Notre Dame's going to land him. The Irish recently offered Josiah Wagoner from Washington. They're going to host him for an official visit in June. He's a 4-star prospect. He's definitely a corner. Christian Gray can play whatever he wants. He's a freak show. Like I'm very high on Christian Gray's abilities. He's a corner, but if he wanted to play safety, he could play safety. If he wants to kick, he can kick or punt or long snap or fullback. Coach?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, you can coach. I think he'd be better on the field, but than on the sidelines. But hey, we can have that discussion. So those are and then Calvin Simpson Hunt, Texas Tech commit who Notre Dame offered, but different discussion for a different day. The Irish kind of their policy. If you're on the Loose Emoji message board, by the way, you should be on it. $1 for 1 year premium access. We've had plenty of discussion about Notre Dame's official visit policies. So if you're on the board, you know what that's all about. But Notre Dame not bringing in Calvin Simpson Hunt, but he is a talented cornerback prospect as well. So Jair Hill, he's a safety corner hybrid, more so a safety. Notre Dame seems to be keeping him a little warm right now. So now we're transitioning to talk about these safeties. Dalton Brooks, more of a long shot. Looks like A&M's the heavy favorite for him. He's visited Notre Dame before. The Irish still talking to him. You got Caleb Downs, the number 1 safety in the country. I saw him a couple weeks ago. I think by the time he signs, he's going to be the single most recruit I've seen with my own 2 eyes in person ever. I think I've seen him 10 times in the past couple years. I see Caleb Downs everywhere. For Irish fans, you're going to hope you see him in the blue and gold. And Tim can touch on Downs as a player here in a moment. Back to cornerback. Forgot about Micah Tease. Notre Dame will bring him in for the June 10th weekend. Micah Tease and Christian Gray are actually good friends, so Notre Dame would love that parlay there. But Tease's recruitment is a bit harder to read right now. So my guess for a 4-man defensive back class is Peyton Bowen, Adon Schuler, Josiah Wagoner, and Christian Gray. What would be your thoughts on that quartet, Tim?
Well, the key is you just got to keep Bowen. I mean, Notre Dame's going to lose 3 safeties, and the safeties behind, Houston Griffith. You're going to lose DJ Brown and more than likely Brandon Joseph. He came to Notre Dame to play 1 year and get the heck out of there. So you got to feel. I mean, Bowen's the key. He's got to be able to come in, play. Schuler's outstanding. I mean, Notre Dame. I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago, Mike. I think it was on our Twitter Spaces. Notre Dame does not get top 10 positional DBs, rarely. So it's been like that for a long time. So they got to keep Bowen. And some of these interviews Bowen has done, when he talks Notre Dame, the guy bleeds blue and gold when you hear him speak. And when you've heard his words speak, it's Notre Dame, Notre Dame, Notre Dame. So, keep him in the fold. I know everyone's trying to poach him, but good. If you're trying to poach him, he's a top 10, safety in the country. Heck yeah, you're trying to poach him. And then, the one guy I really like, and I wish Notre Dame would have gone after him harder, is the Hill out of Illinois, who I know everyone, who's favored to go to Michigan. His film is really, really good. So he's one of those guys I was surprised they didn't push for him more, but maybe that's, as in recruiting, maybe he's been a Michigan guy all along, so they kind of maybe read the tea leaves on that. But Downs is a stud. I've said it outside of the quarterbacks. I think he's the best player in the country. Every time I've seen his film, seen some of his games on YouTube, he is just outstanding. Gosh, he's a good football player. So, but at corners, they've recruited a handful the last couple of years. Obviously, they got Mickey on campus who had a great spring, Bellamy who was in spring, and they got Morrison to go with that big group they signed 2 years ago. Corner's still a position, especially if Gray follows his coach. I know you got to pick. You keep saying he's going to Notre Dame. I think that's going to be a biggie with Christian Gray. Does he go to follow his high school coach and go to LSU? That's going to be it's probably a lot closer, don't you think, than 79-15? That's going to be an arm wrestling battle here in the these next. I think is he the one committing on July 4th? He
is.
Yeah, Rico Flores is the 3rd. He's the 4th. So it's going to be a battle. I love Bell out of Texas. His speed is freakish. If people have not watched his highlight film, go watch him. He's another guy who can play slot, corner, nickel, multiple positions. So there's some good football players Notre Dame needs to get for. at the end of the day, they need 4 DBs in the worst way.
Yep, reading some YouTube comments, someone asked what happened to Micah Bell. I don't know if I misspoke, said a different name, but yeah, I like Notre Dame for Micah Bell. The recruiting prediction machine is at 95%. In big reason for that, I put in a pick, I think it was just Monday, for him to land with the Fighting Irish. I actually talked to Micah today. And we'll have a story on that probably next week, kind of previewing what's next in his recruitment. So make sure to check that out at blueandgold.com. But it's looking like a Notre Dame Ole Miss battle right now. And I was actually on, if you guys watched my video with Darren Pritchett from earlier this week, Darren made a comment about Notre Dame battling Lane Kiffin, and I said I want more Notre Dame Lane Kiffin battles because that means it's going to be a lot of fun. And I know Ashton is a fan of Lane Kiffin as well.
I love Lane Kiffin. If anyone saw, I guess he took his puppy to the SEC spring meetings in Destin, and it got, quote, kicked out. He tweeted a picture because, as we all are aware, Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban are in a bit of a feud, and Kiffin basically tweeted a picture that was like, the only one to get kicked out was Juice, who his dog's name is Juice, and then he put like hashtag yes, there you go, Juice back to the SIP, which if you're following Lane Kiffin on Twitter, come to the SIP is his kind of like recruiting rallying cry hashtag. SIP obviously short for Mississippi. So yes, no, I love Lane Kiffin. I think he's hilarious. But
who would have thought that like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that like Lane Kiffin would end up being the adult in the room? He was such a goofball, and now he's just an awesome goofball. I think he's the one who's enjoyed the Saban Jimbo feud more than anyone else in this world, right?
I agree with that. And I also, to your point about him being the adult in the room, I think what he does well, and we can go back to the Notre Dame stuff in just one second, but final comment on Kiffin. I think what he does well is a lot of these coaches are trained, they speak like politicians, right? So they don't want to answer the hard question. They tiptoe around stuff. Lane just doesn't care. Like he basically has like a fire me you won't type of attitude, which I don't know if I necessarily would want my head coach to have that, but watching as a third party who is relatively indifferent to Ole Miss as a football program, I thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, isn't Mike Leach kind of the same?
Yes, but Mike Leach is just like weird in the best way. Like Lane's not weird. Like Mike Leach is like a conspiracy theorist.
So those two, right? That like is that like this is got to be the best Egg Bowl like between these two programs.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, no. My favorite game last year was the Egg Bowl. Like, I mean, outside of Notre Dame games, but like I was so amped to watch the Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving night. Anyways, we're getting very off topic, and if you guys want to do a live show exclusively on Kiffin and Leach, I will host that again later this week. So that's kind of a joke. I will not, but anyways, Mike's like, okay, no. Anyways, back to Notre Dame. So we'll switch over to the offense. There are a couple of offensive comments along the side here. I know I brought up the Richard Young, I almost said Downs, comment a second ago, but we'll switch over to the offensive side.
You want to go to running back?
Yeah, we can start with running back. So Richard Young, who again was brought up, I believe he's the number one running back in the country. He's definitely a five-star running back. Notre Dame only has one running back commit right now. It is Jaden Lamar out of Washington State. They had Cedric Irvin out of Florida. He is no longer committed. So it's Young, and then Jeremiah Love is kind of the other top priority one, which we can get to in a minute. But we can start with Lamar because that commitment is relatively fresh from last week. So Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so is this a player who Notre Dame really wanted in their 23 class, and they went and got him. His tape's pretty interesting. I mean, we've talked about him so much on the show, so I don't want to dive too much in him. But like the On3 has him ranked as a 3-star, like just outside of 4-star status. I don't see that, but I'm not like up in arms over it. Like it's not a crime. Charles Powers not getting arrested over this. He's a different kind of back. I don't know how to explain his game. I have problems with it. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that's like a general like, yeah, he's kind of like Kyron, but Kyron's just so tough and such a good blocker. Like I just need to see a lot more of Jaden Lamar, which I'm hoping to go back to Washington. I've not been there since I was 5 years old, so I used to live there when I was a kid. So I'm hoping to go back. That'd be pretty neat.
The more
Um,
you know. I
the
didn't know
more,
that.
yes. So yeah. So you got one committed there, and I think they're going to end up with two. And Milton fan says, how is it looking with Richard Young, and how big of an impact would that make? That's what we're here to talk about. That's our thing. So how's it looking with Richard Young? It's a long shot, but Notre Dame's getting one of his 5 official visits, so hey, that's pretty good. I mean, Alabama's the perceived favorites. You see, the recruiting prediction machine is very much favoring the Crimson Tide due to some predictions logged. Yeah, so you see six predictions logged for him to choose the Crimson Tide. So I mean, that would be my guess is Alabama. Notre Dame sources don't feel overly confident, but hey, you're getting them on campus. It's a midweek visit, so they're going to be able to put all their eggs into that basket when he's there. There's no other prospects they have to spend time with, so we'll be able to really roll out the red carpet for him. And then you got Jeremiah Love, who's much more of a realistic option. He's going to officially visit in June. He's also looking at Michigan, Alabama, Missouri, 3 other big contenders. So if you made me pick right now, I think Notre Dame misses on Richard Young, but I do think they land Jeremiah Love. Stranger things have happened though, Tim, and Notre Dame has landed 5-star players before, and hey, they've got a 5-star out of Florida right now. Why not make it 2?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Richard Young. I know it'd be but that would be a huge upset if he comes. But hey, like you said, you're getting him on campus. We go back to he never, when he came out with his top 7 or 8 on Twitter and whatnot, there was no Notre Dame, but he keeps. I mean, his articles have been outstanding, mentioning Notre Dame's always been in his mind, and Coach McCullough has been constantly talking with them, and always mentions Marcus Freeman as well. So getting him on campus, and that's a great point you made there, Mike, about it's going to be a midweek, meaning there's no one on campus. They're going to be able to chauffeur him around and spend 48 hours whining and dining him and having a good time and showing him everything there is about Notre Dame and leaving the great state of Florida and coming up to South Bend, and a long history of guys that have done that out of Florida, and had success. So he's a stud. He's elite beyond elite. But if they don't get him and he goes to Alabama like the other 47 5-star running backs Nick Saban has signed, and you get a Love, well, who's offered him? The entire SEC. So he's got a lot of SEC offers on him, and his film is outstanding for for Coach Reese's offense, the way he runs his outside zone. So good football player, one of those unheralded guys that's starting to just has been blowing up more and more here over the last 6 months since his junior season ended. And going back real quick on Lamar, good football player. He really good. He's definitely a top 300 player. There's no doubt about that. He's got good speed, good hands, and like we talked about in his recruitment video, a lot more physical. When you watch some of his games, and he's been a Wildcat quarterback, he's a physical football player, and he's not a softie as much as he plays slot and does all the tunnel screens and that. He'll get up in there and run inside zone just as good as anyone in the country. He's impressive.
Yeah, I watched a little tiny bit of his film right before he committed. Someone put, I guess, that he reminds them of Theoretic more than Kyron. Maybe I was a bit too young to really remember exactly what Theoretic's game looked like, but both were good, so I would take either one. Anyways, okay, we're gonna move to quarterback really quickly. Move this along. There's really only one person to talk about here. Notre Dame does not have a quarterback commit. They're all in on Dante Moore, the 5-star quarterback, number 8 player in the country, I believe, right? Is that right, Mike? You have the,
yes,
I think, right. Yes. Okay. Number 8 player in the country, out of the Detroit area. We have discussed Dante ad nauseum on here. He deserves it, so that's not a complaint by any means. But any new thoughts, or what are you thinking right now on Mike, on Dante? I know that you kind of say it changes every day, but what are you
Well,
thinking today?
yeah, it seems to change every day on who the team running second is. But
Yeah,
so I like how you phrase that. What are you thinking about right now? Because it's always an interesting place, the mind of Mike Singer. A fellow Mike,
specific to Dante, please keep it specific to Dante.
a fellow Mike says Dante is a silent commit. Let's say he is. Let's just say he like. Who cares? Like, I mean, would you feel good about a verbal commit taking official visits to Miami and LSU and now visit Texas A&M? No, you'd be like, oh, well, that kid's gone. I would see the he gone on the message board 500 times. But because he's a silent commit, somehow that makes it better? Like, it's the most ridiculous thing. So Notre Dame fans, if you think he's a silent commit, that you have at it. But don't think that, well, he's a silent commit makes you feel better, because you can easily silently decommit from a program. It's a lot easier to do that than to decommit from a program you're actually committed to. So that's my rant. Yeah, just see like a little pom pom waving in the comments here. I'm like, guys, I mean, when I started in this industry in 2013, my boss at the time, I was covering USF Bulls, Steve Barry. He told me commitments are not worth the paper they're written on. And kids stuck with their commitments a lot more than they did in 2013 than they do now. And he said that then about verbal commitments 9 years ago. And now think about silent commitments in 2022. What really is worth writing about and not writing about? So that's my thing on, yeah, if Dante's a silent commitment, great. It does not matter if you don't sign him, though. But
Well, that was
any
something.
follow-up thoughts, Ashton? I mean, if you have any specific questions about the recruitment, maybe I can answer. I was just kind of.
No, I think to your point about silent commitments, I've learned in 26 years of being a Notre Dame football fan, just assume the worst. So assume he's going to LSU, which is the worst case scenario, and then you get to be pleasantly surprised if he does not go to LSU, and you get to be really excited if he goes to Notre Dame.
Well, that's a good point. Is LSU worst case scenario, or is it Michigan? I guess it just depends.
So any other year, like if you asked me this a year ago, like I don't care if he goes to LSU because I have no issue with LSU. Now I think that because the knock on Kelly, right, was that he couldn't get the big quarterback. So if Kelly leaves and immediately gets the top quarterback, then it kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It like solidifies the fact that he was correct and he needed to leave to get the big quarterback. So I think that's worse than Michigan. But I will say based on what I've read from the board, my dislike of Michigan is a little bit less than a lot of people on the board. So maybe they think Michigan. I don't know. That's my thought. Tim, do you have a thought as a fan?
Yeah. You need to get on YouTube and watch the old CBS games with Michigan, Bowen, Lou, and then your hatred of Michigan will rise.
Tim, we don't have time for that, buddy. I'm sorry. I love you. We don't got time.
I know.
We got a football preview magazine.
We have time for Mike's silent commit rant, but we do not have time to talk about how much we hate Michigan.
But it's okay. Great. Yeah, there's a couple books I'll let you know about the history of that rivalry. But yeah, you know what? People because there's so many other quarterbacks that have committed, so they're like, well, they've all committed, so Dante Moore should commit. I don't know. I look at it as, this guy's he's hanging out, wanting to see what takes place. Why not sit back and see what's going to happen this year? Why should a quarterback, and this is just me thinking here, why should a quarterback jump into Marcus Freeman without ever seeing a Marcus Freeman football team, right? I don't know. Is that some of his thought process? You look at his top five, okay, they all make sense. If he goes, I know what he's tripping to A&M, I think coming up here soon. Well, Jimbo's got a national championship. He's got a Heisman Trophy on his resume. Jim Harbaugh is, I know he's Michigan, but he's Jim Harbaugh. He's a heck of a football coach. I know people disagree with that, but the guy could coach. And who's his position coach, or the guy that has trained him has been But Devin Gardner I read about, so that's Michigan right there. Oregon. I know Oregon. Oregon is a lot like Notre Dame. They hired a DC just like Marcus Freeman. They got Dan Lanning, but he's got a national championship on his resume. And does he like Nike? LSU. People want to rip Kelly. Kelly did get quarterbacks for a while. He didn't get quarterbacks these last few years, but early on he got, Gunnar Kiel was a 5-star. Brandon Wimbush was in the top 40. Djokovic was in the top 10 in the country when it came to quarterbacks. So, he did have some quarterbacks. Some of those guys obviously just didn't pan out. But and if he goes to LSU, that would be that would be shocking, because you got a Detroit kid from the Midwest going to Cajun country. That would be unbelievable. But Mike's hung with his prediction. I've been a fan of the all-in on Dante because the importance, Marcus Freeman's first class. I just think he's got to go out and get a big-time quarterback. And, if not, you better hope Buckner's the guy for the next couple of years and he's a stud, or quarterback position is going to be quite interesting at Notre Dame.
Yeah, Tim, I don't buy LSU for him. I don't buy Oregon. Miami, yeah. You know who I like? I wouldn't write off Michigan just because of the local factor, and they offered when he was in 7th grade and all that. I wouldn't. A&M is, to me, is the contender that is kind of scary, just because of you talked about the Fisher, what he did with Jameis Winston, and it was Winston that won a Heisman, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But you didn't touch on the NIL thing, and I mean, money's money, and if NIL is really, if they're throwing around some crazy dollars, and Nico Iamaleava is getting $8 million at Tennessee, shoot, man, I'd be picking Texas A&M for like $6 million or something. If that, are you crazy? Come on. So, yeah. With all of that said, though, I think he's going to Notre Dame. Might I remind some people? A lot of people can say, hey, I think Notre Dame leads here. Has anyone else done this? Has anyone else done a prediction? I don't think so.
I'm going to go put one in tonight.
Yeah, well then join me.
I don't. Okay. No, I'm not going to do that.
I'm just going to say, is anyone else? So my point is, I am very much on the Dante to Notre Dame bandwagon. I'm just saying my number one concern school right now is A&M. And that brings us back to our original point that it seems to change each week for who that number, or each day, who the number 2 team is. Is like, is it LSU? Is it mine? But I'll tell you, it's consistently Notre Dame, seemingly at number 1 for Dante Moore.
So we are back where we started, folks. We decided nothing in that segment. Just kidding. That was great, Mike. Thank you. Yes, Tim, quickly, because we have 3 more position groups. Then, yes, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and the other thing with A&M and LSU, they signed 5-star quarterbacks last year. So Dante Moore, does he want to go battle other 5-stars? I mean, LSU got a 5-star, A&M has a 5-star. Out of all these schools out there, where's the one that he could go play at pretty early? I would think it'd be Notre Dame.
There's also the idea that Notre Dame is less likely to take a transfer quarterback. I mean, if you're going to LSU or A&M, they're playing quarterback musical chairs around that conference right now. I guess a little bit with Pac-12 too, if you want to throw in like Jackson Dart from USC to Ole Miss. But kind of once you're at Notre Dame, if you're going to get beat, it's probably going to be by somebody that comes in after you. They're not going to pull in like a proven, or I get proven in quotes, like someone who's played, I guess. Anyways, we'll stop opining on that for the sake of time, but we'll move to wide receiver. There's one commit in the class right now. It is Braylon James. There are a lot of priority targets still out there. Notre Dame needs a big wide receiver class because, as we've talked about, and as if you follow Notre Dame football at all, you're aware that Notre Dame has a wide receiver numbers and depth problem. So we came up with, I believe, 7 other targets on the board. I'll let Mike kind of pick and choose who exactly he wants to talk about first. Mike, go ahead. Or I guess you start with Braylon James first.
Yeah, it is 7, which is, pretty big number. I mean, that's the biggest of the position groups that we've looked at. I mean, signing day is, 6.5 months away, but there is a short-ish list of targets. I mean, it's not a, you would think this is early in the cycle, but it's kind of not. I mean, Notre Dame wants to be basically done with 2023 recruiting in terms of commitments, mostly done about 90% by the start of the football season. So they're at 13 commits right now. I think they would like to be at about 22, 23 going into the Ohio State game. So definitely looks like, by the way, we have a good group here with us live on YouTube. We've been going through position by position where Notre Dame stands. I've been kind of giving the latest on the recruitments. Tim breaking down the film. So make sure if you're just joining us, go rewatch this. We also got it on podcast. I will post on podcast as well. Okay. Braylon James, that was a big one. Chancey Stuckey wanted him right away. 6'2", 185 pounds. Combine freak. I'm really excited to see what he does as a senior. His junior year, played on a 2-8 team. I don't think he got as many targets as he probably would have liked. I don't think they had a great quarterback. So, all in all, Braylon James, big time. So, as far as the targets go, when we were discussing Samuel and Pemba, it was about, hey, they're recruiting him as an athlete, but linebacker is the position that he would likely start out as. Well, Ronan Hannafin, we could have put him with the safeties. We could have put him with the Rovers. We have him with the receivers, but honestly, I think he would play defense. That's my gut feeling right now, is that he would start out his career on defense, but he's a really good player. Marcus Freeman loves him, from what I am told, and I believe that Ronan Hannafin from Massachusetts is leaning towards the Fighting Irish. So we'll go through quickly some of these targets. Carnell Tate, seeming more like a pipe dream. Looks like Tennessee and Ohio State in that order, the leaders for him. But he's still considering the Fighting Irish, so wanted to mention him. I like Notre Dame for Jaden Greathouse from Austin Westlake. Good friends with Braylon James, both from the Austin area. Greathouse had a great, maybe I should say fantastic. I don't feel weird putting great in the same sentence. Fantastic visit to Notre Dame. Man, we must be getting tired here. Or my joke's that bad? I can't even get a chuckle. Or my joke's just that bad.
About great versus fantastic?
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
I'm sorry,
not
I
great.
didn't. Okay, proceed. How's that? I don't know, is that a joke to just be like, I use great twice in the same sentence? Oops, I'll use fantastic. I mean, I support you mixing up the adjectives if that is what you would like for me to say.
Thank you.
You're
my heart is now happy. Thank you, Ashton.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I like Notre Dame to land Rico Flores Jr. from Folsom, California. Another 4-star receiver. I mean, these guys, bigger outside receivers. Braylon James, 6'2", 185. Rico Flores, 6'1", 190. Greathouse, who I've seen in person. He's listed about 6'2", 220. It sounds right to me. So these guys all bigger. Even Ronan Hannafin, 6'3", 200. So right now, I like Notre Dame to keep Braylon James committed, to land Jaden Greathouse, to land Ronan Hannafin, again, more as an athlete, and to get Rico Flores. Now, who a fourth might be, Christian Hamilton, who Notre Dame set up an official visit with kind of out of the blue. He's named to keep an eye on. Joshua Manning, Notre Dame offered in May, might bring him for a visit in June. Malik Elzy, another name to watch from Chicago Simeon. I think if Notre Dame turns up the heat on him, it would be later in the fall. So that's basically the rundown. Tim, I think receivers looking pretty good right now. If Notre Dame is leading for Greathouse and Flores, like I think they are, and then can go get Braylon James, hold on to Braylon James, maybe go get a fourth, not including Ronan Hannafin, be a pretty darn good group. What do you think, Tim? You're still muted, my friend. Oh, there you are. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, it's a solid group. It's not outside of James. I think James is obviously the highest ranked one, and he shows it on film. Greathouse, Flores, good solid wide receivers. Seems like there's a bunch of I think we even chatted about this before. A bunch of C.J. Williams types guys, right? Not a bunch of burners. Are they burners?
How dare you
Not a
bring
lot
that
of.
name into this
I know,
chat?
I know. It's. Well, you know what? He's not going to see much time at SC, so it's all payback, right? It's
What?
all it all
You don't think he
karma.
will?
Not with the guys they got, but we'll talk
Well-
SC down the road. We're going to talk. No, he's not going to get on the field that much. But I don't think.
What,
he
it's
will.
like a
But
true
anyway,
freshman? Whatever. All right, continue.
Exactly. They got some guys, but we'll talk about that way down the road. That's Ashton's betting line there. We'll get into, right? But
No, I'm avoiding that one. Plague, actually. I'm avoiding that line. But
yes.
please continue.
But no, it's a good solid group. I mean, they've offered a ton of wide receivers this year. So if they get a handful of those guys, they just need numbers. I think it's the same thing. We talk corner. They need numbers. They need bodies, and it'd be a great wide receiver. I don't want to say great. Excuse me. Now we got great house. Everyone's using the word great. It'll be a solid group. I don't know if it's a page turner, so to speak. I don't know. I wish they just had a guy that could just go, the distance. And I don't know if they're going to get that type of guy in this class. But,
In the context of Notre Dame receiver recruiting these past few years, this would be, if they even just signed the 3.
Sure.
I mean, if they sign the 3 of us, it would be close to the bar. Like, the bar was really low. No offense. I mean, some of them are, yeah, I guess I probably shouldn't say that. Some of them are very talented, but to say, like, oh, it's better than it used to be is kind of not the best measurement of it.
No, not better than it used to be. It's just, in the context of this, I mean, yeah, this would be very good. I mean, last year they signed 1. Tobias Merriweather's a freak show, but it was just 1. So now you're bringing in 3 players in the same caliber of him. That's 3 times as good.
No, exactly, and and they're it'll look like a class of with the 21 class with Styles, and you get Colsey and Thomas comes around, and you get 3 to 4 in this class that are plays like those guys. They'll replenish itself, but maybe that's the reason why the quarterback in Detroit's taking his time shopping around as well.
Maybe.
I'll comment. Oh my God.
No, I just said maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just gonna comment on D-Rock Irish put this question in the chat there on the side about the Iowa wide receiver Charlie Jones. So from what I've heard, he's probably gonna end up at Purdue. That's what I've heard for the last couple of weeks. But I would not necessarily assume that's because of an NIL deal. That might be part of it. But when you look at the receivers that Purdue's been churning out, no, they're not winning a national title. I think I suggested on our board, like, watch Purdue, and someone was like, why would you go to Purdue? They're terrible. And now he's probably going to Purdue. So they've been pretty decent at developing receivers. But yeah, I don't know if you've heard anything else, but I don't believe he's going to end up at Notre Dame. I think he's going to Purdue.
Yeah, I haven't heard about him taking any visits to Notre Dame. I mean, I was told back January or so, like, for grad transfers or underclass transfers in the offseason, receiver was the number one thing that I heard about. They brought in a defensive lineman, a kicker, and a safety. Definitely needed the safety for sure, but yeah, no receivers to our knowledge.
Yeah. All right, we will move to tight end. This can go pretty quickly. They already have Cooper Flanagan out of De La Salle committed, which is where Foskey went to high school, and a number of other players. It's a big-time high school up there. The other one kind of on the board, Lawson Lucky. Mike, I know that maybe not as hot on him, not as a player, but as adding an additional tight end, or am I wrong? I kind of thought it was Flanagan when I was making this list, but you added him. So what made you add him to the priority still on the board list?
Yeah, I mean, he visited for the spring game, and if there's like if someone like me or another site tweets out an article and it's like Lawson Lucky is officially visiting Notre Dame, and he does end up taking that visit, I would think he's flipping. So just to have him on there to let people know that Notre Dame is still kicking the tires on a second tight end. I don't think it's going to happen. I went and saw his spring game a couple weeks ago. He's wearing Georgia gloves, Georgia towel. I mean, his dad and I think 2 uncles played at Georgia. I mean, it's a long shot, but if he visits, I think it's because he wants to flip. That's
would he be able to visit under the current rules?
I'll just say again, if he visits, I think it's basically to flip. So yeah, just kind of yeah. And it's not so much rules. It's kind of just like I don't know what to call it because there's not like a rule. Like Notre Dame can kind of do what they want on this. It's just kind of their
Yeah.
more of a
Written.
policy
Okay.
on officials with commits. And again, if you have no idea what we're talking about, it's kind of just yeah, like I said earlier, so we've discussed this whole official visit policy for commits on the message board, so you'll have to we'll have to
You have to
catch you up
pay
there.
$1 to figure out what exactly we're talking about. But
Yeah.
it's
This
worth it
sprite is probably worth
for a
like
number of
$3
reasons.
somewhere. Yeah, and you can go read all my stuff for a year. So, yeah, it does seem like Cooper Flanagan. We talked about Alabama trying to get these Notre Dame commits. There's another one. Nick Saban working hard. Brian Kelly's wanting to get him there. Michigan still talks to him, but Cooper Flanagan with that last name, he's destined to stick with Notre Dame, and believe he will be. So, Tim, any thoughts on tight ends before we move on to your favorite position?
Yeah, Flanagan. I mean, he's awesome. I love the guy. That's why Saban. I mean, the very first day they could hit the road, Saban was outside of his school. So people need to remember that back in January when he tried, going there to say hi, and Flanagan wouldn't meet with him. So that was good. But he's a stud. Notre Dame has had Aaron Taylor, College Football Hall of Famer. Derek Landry was, heck of a nose guard. Played with Mike Goolsby on the grade '04 defense. And then obviously you got Foskey and you get Flanagan. That would be four big time De La Salle football players that they've had since the Holtz days, and outstanding. And then as far as Lucky goes, I was agreeing with everything Mike said. If he's on a plane, he's flipping. So I don't think the policy, whatever you want to call it, if he's on a plane, he's already communicated that. But he's got a lot of Georgia in his bloodlines. But he's a heck of a football player. But if they only had Flanagan, they got some dudes on campus. They'll be happy with Flanagan because Mike. 2024, they're recruiting like the entire top 10 when it comes to tight end. So they're going to get two next year that are going to be big time football players.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we'll move to our last group. We go from one Notre Dame specialty at tight end to the other one at offensive line. So Notre Dame has two commits in the class right now, Sullivan Absher and Sam Pendleton, both out of North Carolina. An interesting other, I guess, I think I guess Jagasaw would be maybe the top one, but then after him, Monroe Freeling, who's from South Carolina. So the Notre Dame pulling players out of Clemson's backyard pipeline is currently pretty strong, could get even stronger with Monroe Freeling if he does decide to come to Notre Dame. There are a couple of other ones on the board, but we'll start with the three from Carolina, the two commits, and then the one still left in Freeling.
Yeah, absolutely. It's looking good right now. I mean, if it's offensive line U after all. So, and I'm actually need to pull up one more player, and that would be Elijah Page, who's on campus this weekend. So I think it's Ashton, two commits, and then there's four targets.
So we had Freeling, Charles Jagasaw, Elijah Page, and then Joe Otting.
Yes. Okay. So starting with the commits, and D-Rock, appreciate. He says he's enjoying the show. I'm definitely appreciate it. Sullivan Absher was like, I don't want to say he was the number one guy for Harry Hiestand because I don't want to like single like him out and make others because I also don't know that 100% certainty, but I heard the most about how much Hiestand loved Sullivan Absher as a prospect. Like he was like, we got to get this kid. Like they see first round potential in Sullivan Absher, 6'6", 295 pounds. And I think it was Hiestand offered two offensive line prospects in this 23 class that Jeff Quinn, who's Tim Hyde's favorite coach in America.
Tim just cannot wait to talk about Hiestand. He's like chomping at the bit, about to explode. Because it's been 30 seconds and he has not been able to comment on Harry Hiestand.
Offensive line wins football games, so there's no doubt about that.
Sort of. One could argue you probably need a quarterback and a few wide receivers in this day and age. But that's beside the point. We don't need to fight about that right now. Go
And,
ahead on Harry Houston.
yeah, anyway, so he's staying offered 2 players on the 2023 offensive line unit that Quinn hadn't offered at Notre Dame. Pendleton, who he got committed, and then Elijah Page, who he's hosting for an official this weekend. To my knowledge, Page is the only official visitor on campus, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I like Notre Dame for Elijah Page. Don't be surprised if I put in a prediction after that visit. All goes well. I will probably log that, liking where Notre Dame's at for him right now. Charles Jagasaw, I have a prediction in for Notre Dame to land him. And then I do believe Notre Dame will land either Monroe Freeling or Joe Otting. I think they'll get one of these two guys. Freeling's a tackle, Otting's an interior offensive lineman. But at the end of the day, my gut right now is this is your 5-man offensive line class. 3 straight cycles with 5-man offensive line classes. That'd be crazy. Sullivan Absher, big-time tackle. Sam Pendleton, 6'4", 300-pound interior offensive lineman. Charles Jagasaw could play guard. I like him as a tackle. Number 1 tackle per on 3 in the entire country. I don't think they're going to get Monroe Freeling. I think there's just no way they can sweep Clemson. But I do think that he'll end up picking the Tigers. That's a very tight battle. Could go either way. And I think they land Joe Otting from Kansas. And I think they get Elijah Page from Phoenix. So what would be your thought on that haul, Tim?
That'd be a heck of a 5-man haul. If they don't get Freeling, let's go with your 5. If they don't get Freeling, who's obviously highly ranked and whatnot, I'm telling you, people, watch Page. He is an athlete. Elijah Page out of Arizona can play football. He is a extremely, extremely underrated left tackle prospect. Really good. He's a good football player. So that's I knew he was on campus this week, and you think he's that high on ND? That'd be awesome. I mean, I know you did an interview with him, and he talked about his conversations with Tosh Baker and stuff like that. Who's on campus, same high school, so that's huge. Jagasaw, the ultimate right tackle. He just looks like a future right tackle right there. And then Otting's pretty talented out of Kansas. He's a Pollard. He's an inside guy. 100% center guard type of combo for him. So that would be a heck of a 5-man haul to keep going. The key, I've mentioned 1,000 times, is offensive tackles. So you got to make sure you get 2 legitimate tackles in this class to replace Fisher and Alt.
So of this 5, your tackles would be Absher, Jagasaw, and you think Page?
Oh, Page Page is an offensive tackle.
Okay.
I loved his film. His athleticism is up there. I know the UCLA and my buddies at USC love him or doing everything they can to get him. But you would have 3 right there with Absher, being that swing guy. Does Page play inside? But two out of those 3 are legitimate tackles without a doubt. I really like Elijah Page. Freeling, I'm with you. It's like, man, do you just, you roll, what are the odds, right? What are the odds you get 3 out of the South like that? He is the best left tackle of the group. He would be perfect with Jagasaw at right tackle. I hope they get him because his length and his athleticism. I mean, he's a Ronnie Stanley type of a guy, the way he plays with his arms and whatnot. But if you got 3 away from Dabo, whew, man.
To be fair,
go to Vegas. Go to Vegas if they get 3 from Dabo, right? Go to Vegas and you got some luck and enjoy it.
I was gonna say, to be fair, all 3 of them were borderline Clemson locks. They were gonna go to Clemson. They want to go to Clemson, and Notre Dame's now flipped 2 of 3. So I get your point. It's kind of there's no way they sweep them, but there's kind of no way we ended up with 2, right? And here we are. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of kicker comments. Mike, I don't know,
what did I say?
I'm not as well versed on the special teams recruiting side. I feel like that comes in later. What's the timeline typically on special teams recruiting? I kind of see them when they commit and take mental note, and then no offense to
Tim, do you have any thoughts?
Well, people are real quick. People are mentioning kicker from the spring game, so
Oh, I know. No, I know why. I'm just when people were saying what about kicker this summer, I don't think. I don't think they're getting anybody this summer.
No, Brian's still young. He was one of the premier kickers in the country. They got a heck of a punter coming in, so And if not, you go to the transfer portal and find a guy, right? Well, like they did with groupies. So they'll be fine at the end of the day. And the other thing, Notre Dame, the punters in the spring game were walk-ons. So those weren't even the guys that are going to be punting in the fall. So people need to relax on that as well.
Sott's coming in from Harvard, who's an all Ivy League punter. And I know it's the Ivy League, but we've kind of talked about on here. Ivy League football, you get some pretty good players. It's not the whole roster, but you can find some gems out of the Ivy League.
Yeah, I mean, you're punting the same kind of football, whether you're in the Ivy League or the ACC, SEC. That don't matter. But yeah, Bryce McPherson, All-American punter. You bring in Sott. Look, Notre Dame at special teams they're very, very much about competition. So they're not going to bring in some 6-star long snapper. Yes, that's a thing. And then just be like, all right, the job's yours for 4 years. They're bringing in competition. I'm glad you guys chuckled there when I wasn't really trying to make a joke. I guess no, I did make a joke. Crap. I'm okay. All right. Anyways, yeah, I'm not worried about it. They're going to bring in competition. That'll be fun.
Yeah. I was going to say, on the topic of competition, I asked when we were talking to Brian Mason this spring, I guess the tone of my voice, I didn't mean to insinuate that Sott was going to get the punting job, but I was like, oh, Sott's coming in, like, starter. And he very quickly was like, he's not the starter necessarily. Like, we're going to have a competition. And I was like, oh, sorry. Like, I think my tone, like, insinuated it. I didn't mean for it to, but he was very quick to shut that down. Anyways, so we have made it through all of the position groups. If you came in late, halfway through, 2 positions in, whatever, you can always watch this back or you can listen back via podcast. Do you guys have any final thoughts on any of the groups before we sign off here? Tim, what is so funny?
I like that. We no worries. Yeah, I mean we're not getting paid the money at Notre Dame. They are, so yeah. I guess no worries on our end, right? We're just breaking them down and enjoying it. But I don't think there's a lot of worries in going on blueandgold.com and reading all of Mike's articles and the conversations he had with a lot of these recruits. I mean, they're number 1 in the country for a reason. Marcus Freeman, his staff is working their tail off, and there's a lot of guys to close and finish on. And I know Mike feels confident with a chunk of these guys. Notre Dame's at least in the top 2, and most of these guys we talked about tonight.
Yeah, I wrote an article on Monday about here's all my outstanding, predictions, and let's break down where they stand, and I'm pretty optimistic. So it's gonna be a fun ride, and lock into blueandgold.com, obviously for the next year for $1, but even more specifically, this next month is gonna be a lot of fun.
Yep. All right. So I'll close this out. Before you sign off, make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe. And again, if you're listening via podcast back, throw us a rating and a comment. Other than that, we will be back next week, hopefully with some recruiting news from over this weekend and anything else that pops up. So have a good weekend. Bye.